I'm really happy of being here, and it's not something I'm saying just because I'm here in this wonderful city and this wonderful university, but because you really are a sign. You're a sign that things are changing. Me and Francesca, we met for the first time, was in 2003, when we were young, strong, bold, and we still are, well, we still are young, strong, and bold. And we were something, we were, if I'm not wrong, we were in a conference of Italianists, of people studying Italian literature, but we recognized each other immediately because we were digital humanists. In fact, we started talking without introducing each other. How do you process XML? Oh, I prefer doing it on the server, or I prefer doing it client side. And we also had a really strong and fierce argument about the use of XSLT in browser. So to tell how much we were different from everything else that was outside us. They were talking about. Was in Macerata, exactly. They were talking about trends in literary criticism on Italian literature, and we smell each other immediately that we were part of something else. And as Francesca, I had classical training. My master thesis, my laurea is in Anglo-American literature. It was in postmodernist literature. But then I started immediately working in digital humanities. I felt a great attraction. I mean, sometimes it's difficult to explain what digital humanities is, but there is one thing you can't resist, which is this incredible charm, it's a very fascinating but complex world. So you are a sign that things are changing because you are, if I'm not wrong, you are the first MA course taking students from both the two half of heaven, both sides of heaven, from humanities and from computer science. You're put together. How many of you are from a humanities BA? The majority. So the remaining, no. And who is from computer science? Okay, probably they thought that. It is not that complex because it's not a recipe. Put 2 kilos of this or a cocktail. Put 1/3 of martini, 1/3 of gin, and you will have the perfect cocktail. It's like saying put 1/3 of Shakespeare, 1/3 of Tolstoy, 1/3 of Melville, and you will have a masterpiece. It doesn't work in this way. So it's very complex. Digital humanities is very complex and fascinating landscape. And you have the luck. Well, the luck. You have also have decided to have this, to walk this path with the guidance of someone like us who had incredible struggles and is still struggling. We have always struggled in digital humanities. First, to understand the field, because it was very difficult. We went to, when we were young, and we went to international conferences, which were great, and we were fascinating about what was happening in the rest of the world. And we are still struggling in, well, there are many struggles. Let's not talk about the academic ones, which is, in Italy in particular, are really bad. But also in understanding the field. Because, I mean, we studied, this is valid both for me and for Francesca, and will be also valid for you. You will be I'm sure that you will be very soon, before the end of your degree, starting working in actual projects. And most of the time you will have to do some technical jobs. So we'll have to learn technical skills, as we did studying at night, manuals at night. I mean, XML, XSLT, database programming, whatever. And then you will discover that there is also an abstract level, something more theoretical related to digital humanities, which is, I mean, text encoding is not only a technical activity, it's mostly, and is also a very theoretical activity. I mean, probably you've already heard the lecture by Dino Buzzetti, which is the grandmaster of everyone working in text encoding. So it's, digital humanities is something very fascinating, but everything has a price, and this price is that is very, 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 very complex. And there are so many. We'll never. I remember were you in Florence in 2010, where there was the first meeting for the creation of the Italian Digital Humanities Association. And there was a certain point, a very important Italian professor of Italian literature was Mirko Tavoni, if I'm not wrong, which he directs the BA Digital Humanities course in Pisa, and he said something that really struck me. He's a very important philologist. His work on Dante is really top level. And he said, when I when I listen to BA thesis in digital humanities, I already learned something new. But it's not something new because there are always new information that you can acquire. But when I read a traditional humanities thesis, there is something new on the methodology that I can acquire because I already know it quite well. Also, I contributed to the theory of that particular subject. But when there is a thesis in digital humanities, I always learn something new from the point of view of the methodology. There is always something different. I mean, and this struck me because I was talking with a colleague of mine. She's an historian just the other day. She works with travel history. I wrote a paper on travel history. I sent it to her, so let me know what you think about it. And she said, "Oh, this is fantastic. This is great. My research looks so old compared to you. I feel so." And she has my age. I feel so old compared to you. And I thought about what Mirko Tavoni said. When you are doing digital humanities, you are always doing something new because it's the combination of this recursive combination of these two aspects. At first, you will see the technological aspects in computer science, also because if you came from a background in humanities, you're already full of theory. I mean, you have a lot of theory in the humanities side, but a lot of technical part, because unless you are a philologist, it's difficult that you do some oral linguistic, it's difficult that you do some actual work. Well, on the computer science side, you always do something technical. So it looks like at first that the relationship is between the theoretical side of humanities and the technical side of computer science. It's not like this. There is also a theoretical side in computer science, which is and a practical side in, like, the editorial work, for instance. The editorial work is a very technical aspect in humanities. And once Raul Mordenti, which is a professor of, is also a literary critic, but he also has done a lot of work in digital humanities, he said that in digital humanities, the things that changes the most are the most technical on the humanities. If you think about text encoding, digital edition, the things that have changed the most is the action of transcription, which was considered the most technical when doing a traditional, let's call it that, print humanities 1, and also the act of publishing the edition. Since these two aspects are the most tied to the technical aspects, the print technical aspects, they are the one that change the most in digital, when doing a digital edition, when doing something digital. For what concerns the transcription, now it's all the field of text encoding, which has really a lot of theoretical studies about it. I think they've read, probably there is an Italian scholar, Elena Pierazzo, which has worked a lot about this theoretical aspect of text encoding. The aspect of publishing the edition is not as much studied as the text encoding because it's much, much more complex, and we need some tools, some instrument from the theoretical aspect of computer science to better understand it. And in my opinion, in the digital edition, there are really the two aspects, the two souls of digital humanities are really are well embodied. This is where these two words come together, also because now we live in a world where digital editions do actually rule the world. So to my students, I ask them, what's the first thing you do when you wake up in the morning? And they all have the same answer. I have to grab my mobile phone and to see because I've been out of the information flow for too long, and I have to see how many WhatsApp messages I've got, how many Facebook notifications I've missed, and so on. Because the digital world is like New York City; it never sleeps, and so while we sleep, we are out of this world. And Facebook is a publishing digital platform. Instagram, Snapchat stories, they are all a declination of publishing text, publishing information. So we have the contraposition between what was the book, and the book has been the most important tool in the last 500 years. the printed book. Now, you know better than me that the codex has a longer history. But the book, the tool, the instrument that has changed the world, has 500 years. And if you think about it, what are the qualitative differences between the codex, the handwritten book, and the printed book? There are any? There are something you can do with the printed book that you can't do with the handwritten books, or vice versa? No. On the opposite side, there are something you can do with the handwritten books, like decoration, the so-called Illuminati, and so on, that you can't do in the printed book, and there's also mixtures between them. But think about it: the computer, or better, your generation. I mean, the idea of a computer in the last, while the idea of a book in the last 500 years has been stable, the idea of a computer starting from World War II, when modern computer science started, has changed a lot. Probably you remember in some old movies what was the aspect of a computer. This, if you see 2001, Space Odyssey, HAL 9000, it doesn't have even a monitor. It's a big red light, big blinking red eye. For my generation, a computer is a personal computer. It's like the one you have on your desk. For your generation, a computer is a tablet, is a mobile phone, is a smartphone. So we live in a world ruled by, I like to call it the computational medium, because they all share the same paradigm, which is the Turing machine, which is this abstract model with, I'm sure they will study it probably in some computational thinking course.
They will start on the 13th of November with computational thinking and programming.
Yeah, because understanding, in my digital humanities career, at a certain point, I decided, okay, I have to learn programming. And so I started, as everyone, studying a programming book. At the time, it was Java. Now probably it's Python, the most used language for programming, which is a very nice language. After many years, I felt that I was missing something, and I started studying theoretical computer science. And I thought, oh my God, I was a jerk. Because that was really missing, the theoretical aspect of it, knowing what a Turing machine is, what a lambda calculus is, what are the problems that are not solvable, the problems that are difficult to solve. And this is this theoretical aspect of computer science is also very tied in a cultural and historical way to the theoretical aspect of humanities, because there are many strong links between these two aspects, like mathematical, the philosophy of mathematics and philosophy, logic and linguistics, for instance, are two very good nexuses between these two aspects. In fact, I remember a friend of mine once told me that the best digital humanities people that I found, they are or classicists or logics, because they came from a background that allowed them to understand both words. Anyway, today we are here to talk about digital editions, and digital edition is a very fluid concept. It's something that changed a lot, so I will try to start giving you some hints, some actual example, because the digital edition have changed. I mean, while the printed book has been stable for 500 years, digital edition changes every 10 or 5 years, because they are tied to the underlying technology that changes a lot. I mean, the web now is 30 years, almost 30 years old, but there have been different phases of the web. Now we are young, probably you don't remember what was called the web 1.0. Probably what you remember is the web 2.0, which was already very dynamic. Now we are talking about web 3.0, intelligent, all the rise of artificial intelligence, of machine learning. So you see, things are changing very quickly. So we have to understand what changes and what does not change, is what remain more or less constant. So I will start with my first slide. Is about, it's called the motivational slide. So this is a sentence taken from a TV series that probably you know, which is Doctor Who. This was from the second episode of the second season, which was Tooth and Clove, broadcasted in 2006. And all the main characters, they are blocked in a room. There is an enemy, which is an alien werewolf, which is outside the room. And one of the characters said, oh my God, we are stuck in this useless room. We don't have any weapons. How we can get out from here? And the doctor, the main character, said, we're in a library, books, the best weapons in the world. This room is the greatest arsenal we could have. So you see, the book object is something fundamental, but now the book object is in danger. People is always reading less and less books, so we have to discover how we can preserve the function of the books, the function of the book in this new world. Once I was in a presentation of oh, by the way, if you have any question, any curiosity, I don't want to do a monologue for 2 hours. No, I'm being recorded, so I can't say very. Francesca will be very unhappy with me. This is the polite way of saying it. So if you have any question, any curiosity, if you want to interrupt, do it at any time. You are a student of a new course, and therefore you also should be used to learn in a new way. Once I was in a presentation, there was a guy from the British Library, and he was presenting a project about having a digital space, a physical space, but only with digital information, with all high resolution, it was more than 10 years ago, high resolution touch screen to see digital images, maps, and so on. And I remember there was a professor emeritus of English literature, and he said, we are facing a very important shift because we have a problem. On one side, people who grew up having the book as their most, as their knowledge tool, are able of doing deep reasoning. They're able of reason in a very elaborate way, but they're not able of using new media tools. They have difficulties with it. On the other side, the new generation are incredibly skilled in using these new media tools. They can jump from one argument to another, so they are very good on a horizontal level, while the previous generation is very good in on a vertical level. But the new generation is not as good as doing some profound and complex reasoning. So what we have to do is to have best of both worlds. So to have both the ability to move in a skilled way on a horizontal level, also the ability when we want to go deep, I'm sure that all of you have a Facebook account, right? And you spend some of your time, if not most of your time, on Facebook. And you have seen what's happening when conversations on Facebook go wrong. The level of reasoning, there is only two main attitudes, which is or dating or flaming. And there is no room for reasoning. This is also tied to the fact that Facebook, how Facebook was born, is born from students. Was not studied for a platform like Wikipedia, for instance, to have some kind of elaborated discussion, so to produce an editorial product at the end. The fact is that Facebook now is where the political discussions, economical discussions are led. You think about the importance of Facebook for politics. But the level of discourse on Facebook is most of 90%, like the famous Sturgeon law, 90% of it is crap.
I'm not sure that their generation is still working on Facebook.
Yeah, probably they are on Snapchat or WhatsApp or Instagram, because Instagram is more visual. And I want to talk also about the visual approach on how many of you spend most of your time on Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, or Snapchat? WhatsApp. In fact, their generation is more on WhatsApp. But you see what's the fact? Facebook is text-based. Instagram is visual-based. There is more people. Probably the Gianluca Vacchi phenomenon. The billionaire dancing is an actual product, commercial product, and his marketing guru told him, you have to focus on Instagram, because this is where the youngest generation is. It's not on Facebook anymore. It's on Instagram. And so I want to talk also about the power of visual communication, because visual communication now is ruling let's call it the social web. Because it's, if I ask you how many books do you read per month, probably, well, you are university students, you will tell me 5, 6, 10, whatever. you tell me a number. But if I ask you how many TV series do you watch, the number will be incredibly higher. You watch more TV series because TV series have the advantage of being an immediate approach. And I'm not talking about the level of writing, because the level of writing of many TV series is higher than level of writing of many novels. But the visual aspect is very strong. And this brings us back to the start of multimedia. At early 2000, when the hypertext started spreading, when there were multimedia CD-ROM, many scholars went back to psychology studies to understand what was the most effective way to mix different information together. And visual images had a larger approach, because visual communication is very strong. And in fact, today I want to show you a cultural project where the visual aspect, a very important cultural project where a visual aspect is very important, and is a way to bring culture to the new generation. Anyway, this is always from the universe, which is the fictional universe based on Doctor Who. And this is always from another series, which is Torch, which is a spin-off from Doctor Who. And the third series was Children of Earth. There is this meeting between the human race and an alien race. So the human representative tells to the alien representative that they have prepared all the documentation related to human history, but they need information about the technology for transferring this information, because they don't know what kind of technology they're using for documentation. So we have to know what kind of technology do we have to use to send you this information. And he adds this line. So this is not constitute a request for information or transfer specific technology. So you see, usually we are used to a diachronic change of information technology. I mean, oral communication, written writing, volumen, codex, printed book, and now the computational medium at first. In this way, we have a very asynchronic, we have two different information technology against each other. They have to know what kind we don't think about it, even though many important scholars like Bolter said about the remediation, when the old media has to remediate, the new media has to remediate the old media, and they live together at the same time. Now TV is imitating the web, or there are also some books which try to imitate the hypertext version or the data aspect of the web. So things are very, very complex, and we have to be aware of this complexity. Okay, this is a nice. Let's see. There is the internet connection, right? Yeah. This is a very interesting. Oh my God, Internet Explorer. Okay, no one is perfect. Oh well. Let's see if I match if I open it with Chrome. Yes, but do not worry. We are digital humanists, so we are able of. This is a very interesting. Shame. Anyway, this is a very interesting documentary. I will show you. This flash, the problem every time. Okay. This is a very interesting documentary made by, probably you know Stephen Fry, is a very famous English actor. He has made this for BBC4, this documentary called The Machine That Made Us. And it's an hour-long documentary about the invention of printing, also about the life of Gutenberg, which is quite mysterious. And also goes to a shop where they print books using the traditional, impression, the way Gutenberg invented, the printing press that Gutenberg invented. Because during the years there have been many changes. Now books have been printed. And the title is The Machine That Made Us. On the other side, there is and this is. Have you seen this? Have you seen this sketch? Let's watch it. This is a sketch was made by, I don't remember whether they were a Norwegian or a Danish comic duo. They made this sketch, which was incredibly.
Broder Ansgar?
Ja.
Det er deg, ja?
Ja.
Så bra.
Oh, I need the one with the subtitles, sorry. I think there are some no, there are not subtitles, okay. Yeah.
Broder Ansgar?
Ja,
Det er deg, ja.
ja.
Så bra, ok.
Ja, hei du.
Can you hear it?
Hei du. Ja.
Ja, hva gjelder det?
Ja.
Can you read the subtitles?
Det er denne her. Ja, vil du sitte?
Takk.
Ja.
Jaha.
Ja, så den, jeg har ikke fått gjort noen ting hele formiddagen.
Ok, nei, jeg beklager at det tar tid. Altså, skjønner vi holder på å legge om til et helt nytt system, og da skal alle ha hjelp på en gang. Vet du.
Ja,
Så du kommer ikke inn i den.
Check
Nei, bare
the
ligger
word they're using, the new system.
Og åpne den.
Ja, åpne den. Altså, hvis det hadde vært så enkelt, så hadde jeg jo ikke tilkalt helpdesk, hadde jeg vel?
Nei, det er
Nei.
sant.
Nei. Vil du ha en kopp varmt vann?
Nei da, det skal være fort gjort. Dette
Ja.
skal vi se. Du bare gjør der. Sånn.
Ja.
Da er du i gang.
Ja, altså så langt kom jeg også.
Ok.
Ikke sant? Men så stoppet det opp, og så var jeg redd for at noe av teksten skulle forsvinne, så jeg turte ikke å gå videre.
Åja, ok. Nei, men du skjønner at inni her så ligger det kanskje flere hundre sider med lagret tekst. Så for å komme videre, så tar du tak i et ark på den måten her, og så liksom blar du over på neste side sånn. Da fortsetter teksten der.
Jeg blar, altså.
Du blar, ja.
Men når jeg skal tilbake, da?
Ja, da bare blar du tilbake igjen. Tar tak der, og så gjør du sånn. Der, så er du tilbake til den teksten du hadde i stad. Ikke noe
Ok, så den
forandret.
slutter der,
Ja.
og så fortsetter den der, ja. Ok, men når jeg skal avslutte for dagen, hva gjør jeg da?
Da bare slår du sammen permene
Ja?
på den måten der. Sånn. Da er den lukket, da ligger alt lagret inni der.
Altså, jeg risikerer ikke å miste noe av teksten her nå,
Nei,
altså.
alt ligger lagret inni her nå.
Ja.
Da må du i tilfelle sette fyr på hele greia. Det er kanskje lite sannsynlig. Så.
Ja, ok. Nei, men for det er noe med det at ikke sant, når du har holdt på med skriftruller,
Ja.
så tar det litt grann tid å konvertere til å bla i en bøk.
Ja.
Ja, det er greit.
Det er greit.
Ja, flott. Ja, men du, en til før du går. Jeg bare gå gjennom en gang til. Altså, jeg åpner
Ja.
sånn,
Ja, riktig.
og så, hva har du kalt det?
Blar.
Jeg blar,
Ja, bla videre.
blar frem og tilbake.
Ja.
Og når,
Teksten ligger der hele tiden.
ja. Og når jeg er ferdig, så bare lukker jeg den.
Ja, riktig.
Flott.
Fint det.
Kjempefint.
Ja, flott det.
Ja, men du, vent, ikke sant? Nå er den sånn igjen, nå får jeg ikke åpnet den. Nå får jeg ikke åpnet den.
Ja, det er fra feil side. Du må åpne fra andre siden.
Så det er ikke likegyldig, det,
Nei,
altså?
du må åpne fra den siden der. Sånn. Der. Der er den åpen.
Ja vel.
Har du
Ok.
lest manualen, eller?
Manualen?
Jeg skal følge med som manualen som brukerveiledning. Det er sikkert den der. Der, vet du.
Å ja,
I
den,
der
ja.
står alt sammen.
Ja, men ikke sant, der har du samme problemet. Får den ikke opp. Åpnet den.
Ok, det skulle du kanskje ha tenkt på.
Okay, so this sketch had an enormous success and it went viral. If you think about it, because why? What's the key factor of this sketch? Because it applies something we have always all of us have lived. Also, a problem, a technical problem, and dealing with a technical guy to solve it, which is never easy to talk with technical guy, but with something that is very familiar, the book, and also transposing it to the medieval age when there was the switch from the scroll from the volumen to the codex to the book. If you think about it, the language that we're using, the new system, losing information, you can apply it. You can perfectly apply it to the change from the book to the digital medium. So it has always happened. Moreover, there is a nice aspect. When they say this is the end book, and it's always a book, there is some kind of ontological issue, because what is supposed to help you, the end book, is of the same stuff of what you're supposed to use. And this is something, for instance, that happened with critical edition. If you think about a critical edition is a book which contains a text which is made of other text contained in other book. So, but they have the same level. Why the digital edition were almost immediately used in scholarly editing? Because you had something that had a different ontology, the digital edition, in fact, that has a different ontological level from the object you're trying to model. So you can overcome this level. So that's why the hypertext, if you think about it, a scholarly edition, a critical edition, is something that for its nature is metatextual. And that's why the use of the hypertext was immediately reckoned as something very useful in critical editing, because it was a tool, an instrument which was on an upper level that the object they were trying to recover, opposite from the fact of producing print critical edition that were on the same ontological level of the text that they were editing. So if you think that history is repeating and repeating and repeating again. So, and this is we start from this. This is, and by the way, there are, you know that when the first computers came out, most of the programmers were women, because women were more, you know that the first computers were created to calculate ballistic trajectories during World War II for calculating the how much of powder do they have to use, what was the wind, what was the weight of the bullet, and so on. So what was the inclination of the cannon, and so on. And there were some calculation tables, and these calculation tables were made by women because women were more precise than men in doing this calculation. And there is a whole generation of women. They are called the ENIAC girls. And they shows this, what were the programmers of the first generation. Then something, there was also one great programmer, her name was Grace Cooper, which is the one who invented the first compiler. But then this got lost, in particular during the 70s and the 80s, and programming could seem something like that only men could do. Digital humanities is also a way of putting back women in computer science, which is an important gender aspect of this subject. So there is this other documentary. This is, okay, always forget that we are Internet Explorer. And this is called, it was done in the early, there is the, I wanted to show, okay. The title is The Machine That Changed the World. It was done between the American ACM, American Computation Machine, and the ABC, American Broadcasting Society. And in 5 episodes, they describe what will the start of the computer, from the great brains that invented it, to, okay, this is not available. The 4th episode is about the thinking machine, it's about artificial intelligence. The 5th episode, the last episode, is about, they are talking the new communication network that is going to spread over. This was done in '93. So almost 30 years ago. So it's interesting to see, the title of the documentary about the printing press was The Machine That Made Us, and the title is The Machine That Changed the World. So if you see there is always this idea of the machine that is changing something, and that is constant in the change of information technology support. And there's always from the same years, there are these 2 very nice documentary. This is Hyperland. Hyperland is a documentary that was written for BBC by Douglas Adams, which is this, probably you know it because it's, Douglas Adams is the author of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which I hope is something that you have or you will read. And it starts in a very interesting way. There is this guy who falls asleep in front of the TV, and suddenly an artificial intelligence came up and showed you what is hypertext, and show different kind of hypertext. This was in the early, showing music and text, and at a certain point he always plays this guy is Theodore Nelson, which is the one who coined the term hypertext. At a certain point, he decides how to. This guy is the artificial intelligent, or it's called intelligent agent, which shows him the wonders of the hypertext, and so he can decide what kind of manner, what kind of dress is he having. So in this 50 minutes long documentary, the normal viewer is shown what hypertext is. And hypertext is shown as a big revolution compared to what was to the TV, what's happening before. You can decide your own program. You can decide what you're going to watch. I mean, now it's very naive. It's very funny to think what was, but it really was a word before. And more tied to our talk today is this other. This is from the 90s, and this is from the 92 or 93, if I'm not wrong. And it's an episode of this TV show called Computer Chronicles. Computer Chronicles was a TV program about computing. As you can, they are all available online. So the one on digital journalism, one on online games, one about integrated software. It's very, I mean, they look very, it's only 30 years ago, but they look, it's at the same time it's charming. It's a very strange feeling, because what is presenting as cutting edge is something really very, old. And in this episode, it's all about electronic publishing. They show the wonders of what a computer can do. This is Bob Stein. He founded a company called Voyager, and they produced the first interactive CD-ROM. You can see now there is a CD-ROM about The Hard Day's Night, which is the Beatles movie. So you have the video, you have the text. There is another. Now this is interesting, because this is a. Logically, you use these books with these interactive books with a computer. You don't use it with a smartphone or with a tablet. And it's interesting because in this kid's book, she already says that it has given incredible pedagogical effect on people with, on children with learning problem. So they are more easy for them to use compared to printed books. So you see, it's all very, very strange, because in some way, some theoretical aspect, they come over again. So the main issue is this is a dictionary, when you can go out. No, this is a literary text, when you can go at the picture of Dorian Gray, when you can go out, you can look for every word. And this, we are talking about the early 90s, and this was seen as an incredible revolution. Now, the revolution has happened. We live in this world, but we still don't understand all the implication. There is an incredible on YouTube. And even though the technology, Voyager talks out with Star Trek Voyager or something else. The Society of Mind, that was okay. This is one of the most sold CD-ROM of the Voyager, this company founded by Bob Stein, which is called the Society of Mind. It's on artificial intelligence, and is an incredible structure. It's a structure that is still, while the technology of the CD-ROM is obsolete, the way that this CD-ROM was structured it's incredible. There was this a theory, of writing with some theory about artificial intelligence, and now Marvin Minsky, which is the one of the most famous scientists in artificial intelligence, he was the consultant for Stanley Kubrick for 2001. He came up suddenly, okay, probably this is too difficult, I'm going to explain you what this theory is really about. So both the cinematic language, the visual language were really good, they were working together as in an orchestra to deliver the idea, and they work perfectly. The problem is that the technology of this CD-ROM now it's very old and it's obsolete. So there's a whole lot of product, and this is another product that we are seeing coming up again with the apps, for instance. Now we are going to see some app for digital edition, which are really great, but they have the problem that in 5, 10, 20 years, what will happen of them? There are, I don't think, Francesca, I don't think that they will study something about the preservation formats in your course, so we'll see what some possible solution could be. Okay, now there, on this slide, which I've already used, there are some parts about the theoretical aspect. I mean, you probably already know about okay, I will remember the engines invented by Charles Babbage, the difference engine and the analytical engine, which are the actually great grandfather of the computer, and also the abstract model like the Turing machine. This is a video about the Lego version of the Turing machine, which shows how this computation function works. There is also a nice movie about Alan Turing. Probably you know the movie with Benedict Cumberbatch, which came out a couple of years ago. There is another movie which is more realistic from the scholarly side, which is The Breaking the Code with Derek Jacobi. And in a certain point, there is a portion of this video where he explains, it's a 10 minutes video, when it talks about the
I've been furnished with
how we came up with his Turing machine, all the relationship with the Bertrand Russell, Kurt Gödel, and in 10 minutes he explains why he had to create this machine to solve a theoretical problem in mathematics. And it's on the link, so I advise you to watch it, because it's the root of the computers are there. Okay, so let's talk about the difference between the ontology and the epistemology of a digital edition. So on one side, we have the ontology of a digital edition is not that different from the stuff of which is made of, is not that different from the ontology of a vending machine, because while on the other side, on the epistemological side, they're quite different. On one side, you have the struggle for the survival. On the other side, you have the conquest for knowledge. This is a screen from the movie Agora, which is about Hypatia, the classic philosopher. And if you remember, in this movie, which is also about the struggle between pagans and Christians, she's in the Library of Alexandria. The Christian assault the library, and the pagan scholars, they try to save the stuff in the knowledge in the Library of Alexandria. The problem is that this knowledge is in scroll, in volume format, so they have difficulties grasping it, so they can save only part of it. In fact, there is one theory, it's not an official theory, that the book was very tied to the Christianity, to the Christian religion, because it was easy to hide. There are two theories. One is because it was easy to have a synoptic view of the four Gospels. The other, which you couldn't have in the scroll. The other is that you can hide it very, very easily compared to the scroll. So you see, there's always also pragmatical and technical aspect in the spreading of knowledge. So you will study when you will study computational thinking. The logic between a vending machine is called a finite state automaton. You know exactly what's going to happen. You have to put an exact amount of coin to have the particular product, and as soon as you have put the exact amount of coin, the circuits made that the product you have chosen will fall. You select the number of the product you want, which is tied to a particular amount. You put that amount, and the circuits which make the product deliver, which is exactly how a digital edition works. You have to program everything. It's what's called a deterministic machine. There is nothing non-deterministic in a digital edition. Everything has to be programmed. And we'll see later what we can classify the different aspects of the digital edition. So actually, it's a little bit more complex. The digital edition is a finite state automaton, a little bit more complex than the one of the vending machine, but have exactly the same nature. And this is also tied to the kind of language they have to deal with. One of the most fascinating aspects in computer science is the relationship with linguistic. When programmers had to find a way to create artificial languages, not to program the computer using the machine language, which is made only on 1 and 0, which is very, very complex. So they started creating more human-readable artificial languages. They went to linguistic theory, and in particular the theory of Noam Chomsky, which probably you already know. And there was one particular theory, which is the Chomsky hierarchy, which was suitable for creating artificial languages. In fact, you see, there are this kind of automaton which can, the more complex the language, the more powerful the machine has to be to deal with this language. And in particular, the programming languages and also markup languages like XML, they are in this area, context-free language, so they need push-down automaton to be dealt with. So we can classify the kind of languages, the complexity of languages we are dealing with, and the complexity of processing we deal. So sometimes we don't think about it. A digital edition is a program. Now we can put different programs together. We can have publishing frameworks which make things easier to deal with. But in the end, is a software which has to be programmed. And you will see that when you will work with digital edition, Francesca, Paul Eggert, when it was on Friday? On Thursday. I worked closely with a close friend of Paul Eggert, Peter Schindlisburg, which is the author from Gutenberg to Google. And the first time we started, one of the first talks we had while working together, he has been working as a textual criticism, and he worked with computer scientists since the mid-80s. And we were in the mid-2000s, and he told me, the problem is in digital philology, on creating the critical electronic scholarly edition, that philologists or textual criticists, they speak their language. Computer scientists, they speak their language, they don't understand each other, and they have meetings, they talk a lot, but then they come back to their work, to their office, and to their communities, thinking that the other does not understand anything and is stupid. This is what happens most of the time. So the task as digital humanist is to bridge this gap, is to understand enough of both languages to work as a translator. There is a classicist philologist in my department. She's a romance philologist, and I also have an engineer which is very skilled in artificial intelligence. He has been working with description logics since the 90s. So they're both masters of their own craft. They can't manage to work together. The engineer would like to, also because her wife is a librarian, so she is very interested in humanities, and also she's interested in having electronic editions. They've tried to speak together a couple of times and was not possible. They can't understand each other. Actually, there is things like this kind of use of linguistic in computer science are one of the nexus where we can join these two worlds, but it's not that easy. Anyway, have you understood what's the difference between the ontological level and the epistemological level of a digital edition? On the ontological level, a digital edition is a push-down automaton, so it's not as much different from a vending machine. On the epistemological level, it's something very different, and it's the hair, is the legacy, is the continuation of how humans have carried knowledge since the invention of writing. Okay, this is a very interesting article from The Economist. It was published in 2013. It's not that there isn't written anything interesting. People in this business know quite well what's written there. But first, is an essay published by not a scholarly journal, by a general journal, and moreover, it has a very interesting aspect. It's an essay about electronic publishing, which exploits some features of. This is Internet Explorer. I hate Internet Explorer. Okay, now it's working. So as you can see, there are three ways of reading or listening to this paper. The first is mimicking the way of the book works, so turning pages. The other is reading it, so having a codex view of this article. The other is having a traditional web page or scrolling or volume view of the same article, and the last is by listening to it. So, and there is also an interesting, you see, in the scroll version, the graphics is in color, and some of them are interactive. There is also a function which, allowed to, you see, there is some interactivity on the graphic, which is not present in the codex version. There was also one aspect that is very interesting, which is I'll find it. Okay, yeah, it's here, but it's not working. Also because of the Flash player. Basically, it's a third-party services. It's a small box where you decide how many words you want to read per minute. This is an external services. It takes all the words of these essays and it shows you at a certain pace, at a certain speed. So you can watch it on a small screen, having in front of you. And this can be used with every kind of text. See, this shows how in the digital edition things is like Lego bricks. Things are put together so to have new function. This is the most interesting function of digital edition. So what was most interesting is that The Economist, which is not a generalistic journal, not a scholarly journal, devoted this essay to digital edition, also applying some of the techniques used in this field, which is one of the first things you will learn is how to separate content from presentation, to have the same content with different presentation. And there's also very interesting initiative. This one is made by, is supported by Google. It's called Editions at Play. And look at the title, we make books powered by the magic of the internet. There are some books, you can, some of them are free, some of them are very, very cheap. And you can read it only on a computing device, in particular your mobile phone. These are textual, you can call them books, probably not. You can call them textual objects, which exploits the computational medium. The first one, which is quite nice, is about The Truth About Cats and Dogs, is a story about two writers that have to work to each other. And so you have you can decide to switch from one side to another. So you see what things the one writer is thinking about the other. There's also some interesting issues which will make a genetic criticist go mad. At a certain point, one of the two starts writing something, then he changes his mind, says, no, this is too rude, and he changes what is writing to the other. So you can enter into the mind of the writing, and you can see actually the letter disappearing, appearing, and then disappearing. So this is something that you can only do in a computational way. Not in the printed way, it would be much more difficult, if not impossible at all, to have something like that. And there are also many other books. This is interesting, not from a literary point of view, because it was quite, I don't understand why it's not showing this, but it was written by Gianrico Carofiglio, the famous writer, and it's sponsored by Mercedes. And the story is not that good. It's a very simple story, but it uses your location and your time of the day to customize the story for you. So the character is where, I mean, if I read it in Bologna, I will give some information about Bologna. If I read it in my hometown in Viterbo, I will give some information in Viterbo. So it's a start. It starts using the things like geolocalization and the time of the day. I mean, if I read it during the daylight, I will have some kind of visual images. Either during at night, I will have some other kind of images. I have to be honest, the ending result is not of a very literary value, but it's interesting. It's interesting because both from that Mercedes is going to sponsor his product using the skill of a talented writer, and also the possibility offered by the digital edition. So there are many of them. And they are quite funny, and they gave you something different, which is these entrances and exits uses Google Maps and Street View to travel all around the world. It's called a Borgesian tale of a guy traveling, entering a door and entering a magic door and traveling all around the world, and you see the places where is into. I would like to. Do we want to make a pause in the middle, or do we want to? No, we are continuing. Okay, you're little bit earlier. Okay, so because you are not sleeping, so I can and still to be enduring what's happening, so we can go on. There is this project, which is a project by Google. I just discovered it a week ago, and it's incredibly interesting. It's called Google Arts and Culture. And in my opinion, this is also a digital edition, because think about the concept of the edition. The edition is a way of publishing. I mean, the digital medium has forced us to rethink what we thought was something fixed, was something, we take it for granted, things that went without saying. So we have to think again about the concept of the book, of text, of document, and of edition. They are, first of all, I mean, you said, I've read a book. I really like this book. Actually, you should say, I really like the story written in words and embodied in this physical object called book. But we never, now, things like we think about digital text, digital documents, digital book, digital edition, digital libraries, digital archives, and they all have different meanings. So the modeling power, if you ask me about the really power of computing, is modeling, is creating models of the actual words, more complex and more interesting words that you can have in physical reality, because you are not bound by the law of physics, you are only bound by the laws of logics. So this project, in my opinion, is an addition. It acquires digital representation of cultural objects from institutions all around the world, and now there is a word which is very hot since a couple of years, which is storytelling. I actually hate this word, because it really, sometimes it made the magical act of narrating very, very simple, but it's when you say storytelling, everyone knows what you're talking about. So what Google is doing is creating a storytelling, putting together different discrete digital object, cultural digital object from institutions all over the world. Also say, oh, look what's happening today. There was very interesting, very nice the other day about the black cats in Hollywood in 1963. And they create, there is a digital archive called the Resetti Archive. They all digitized the writing and the paintings of the Resettis, and then they create tools called Collects, which was short for Collect and Exhibition, for everyone to create private exhibitions. This project does a very similar things. If you go to there was one, okay, there should be a right menu. I probably have to enter into. I want to use, sorry. I hate Internet Explorer and I want to use Chrome. Okay. If you see, there are some exhibitions. There's also an interesting experiment. Probably this is too much advanced for you, but you will understand in a... they apply machine learning algorithms to this cultural object to see what objects can be put together, how it's possible to create links between them. And this is very, very interesting, because it's a mixture of artificial intelligence and cultural object. You see, there are some exhibitions. One in particular was about okay, here it is. The Grand Tour of Italy. So they took the power, the cultural power of Grand Tour, you know what was done in the 16th and 17th, 18th century by young nobles from across Europe. And so they create narration using Google Street View 360 degrees video to show the wonder of Italy. All the videos are on YouTube. And what's the difference is they create this using this kind of this approach, which is very, I do think that this project was suited for having young people, the younger generation, getting close to cultural effect. If you see the kind of the visual images are predominant, the text has only is the narrative joint between the different aspects. You see,
became yellow. In the face and the body, a lot of bubbles, purulent bubbles, a very high fever.
See the image of a high quality. I mean, compared to what is a kind of cultural Instagram, while on Instagram you have a lot of entropy, a lot of information that you don't want, and information that is not that valuable on a cultural level, probably on a sociological level, but not on a cultural level. Here you have only items that are high quality, high cultural quality value, that is tied together in a way that can create a narration between all these different aspects. So you can watch.
Ti trovi ora nel lazzaretto vecchio. Nel 1423, quest'isola naturale di 2,5 ettari fu completamente...
Okay.
In soli 2 anni, 1/3 della popolazione di Venezia fu sterminata.
And there are different, there's one about the street art in Rome, the one is about the Teatro Opera Massimo in Palermo, and there are different exhibitions about different parts of Italy. There's also some editorial feature, and you can see also the text is at the minimum. What is very predominant is the visual aspect because it's the most effective. And I mean, I'm saying that the text is I'm not saying that the text is simple or is stupid. I'm saying that the text is the minimum necessary, and it has an invaluable. Probably you came from, you have done studies where text were always predominant. If you're a literary criticist, or if you study philology or whatever, text as always. Now text has to deal with other kind of information. As you can see, image is something that it's used, the text is used to put together images, and also the images gives value to the invite you to read the text, and you have to convey the maximum of information with the minimum amount of possible text, and you have to deliver quality information. Sometimes, in particular in Italy, in academic, we overuse words. We tend to write too much because it's very nice to get lost in words most of the time. But in particular, when dealing with the new generation, it's something that it has to be brought to them in a very gradual way. So you see, this is this kind of editorial feature. If you think about the name editorial, the editorial has always, in a journal, has always been something which gives you a particular view on a topic, and it's something very real, written by a very famous journalist or writer. In this way, the editorial is something that tries to bring you in on a particular subject using images, video, and audio, and so on, and trying to juxtapose all of them together. But in the end, you need to have something which is coherent, which is not that easy. I think that there are many similarities with the language of the comic books. Comic books and multimedia have a lot in common because they have to. If you think about multicodical, as you want it, comic book is a language that is born as multicodical. So this Google Arts and Culture, and this is one. There are many exhibitions. One is on West Side Story. This is about fashion, and there was a similar project. You could see a similar theme. Another project was. This now is closed, but it was an experiment by BBC to create I Wonder. You see the I, which was used in iPod, and so on, and I Wonder, which is a pun also, wonders of the world, and wandering. And so this is a guide. As you can see, you know exactly what the steps of your guide. This is about. Made by top-level scholar, was presented by top-level actors, and this is a guide to introduce to new generation. This was done for the centenary of the First World War. So this is, as you can see, the structure, the cognitive structure. It's very similar between these two projects, because they have as few as text as possible, a lot of clips. Okay, we have always the problem with Flash. You see how the use of the visual and the text and so on, and to introduce so complex themes to young generation in a very effective way. Because, I mean, the attention, how long can you keep your attention on something now? 5 minutes probably, even less. But that's why Instagram has a lot of success, because and there are also some very important discussion about this on the, because in a book you have to get lost in a book. You have to, okay, Times is not running anymore for me, I have to read this book, and you get lost in the book. While and that's why some scholars prefer using e-readers in contrast to smartphone or tablets, because on tablets you are reading something, okay, WhatsApp notification, ringing, and so on. So reading is something that require concentration. So you can see there is a similarity between notwithstanding they are two very different projects, between how they also use Google Maps and so on, how information is presented in these two different products, but which are very, very similar, and they have the same aim, also bringing cultural issues and cultural content to young generation. Okay, now actually it's all happened before, because in the end of the well, anyway, you will have a lesson on electronic literature, so we'll know about it. But please, when we will have, which is made by Professor Reva, please remember that some titles like Afternoon, A Story, Patchwork Girl, Victory Garden, which are most of the successful hypertext literature, which they had to read it on a computer, they were on CD-ROM, and you decided where to go on your story. And these, to be honest, most of them, these are the only 3 which were awarded, also placed in history of literature, because they were recognized a literal value. The other were more interesting experiment. As you can see, now we have digital editions, multimedia, which use movies, images, Google Street View, geolocalization, and so on, used on a mobile phone, while at first they had to be used or to be read on a computer, on a Mac computer. And okay, this is about the interaction. I mean, comic books. This book Nadia by Breton made a very strong use of images. This is probably you have seen the movie The 12 Monkeys, The Army of the 12 Monkeys, with by Terry Gilliam, with Brad Pitt, and there's also a TV series about it. The 12 Monkeys takes its basic story from what's called in Italian is cineromanzo, cinematic cine novel, because they were still screen with voice, with dialogues, and it's a masterpiece. It's incredible. It's really beautiful. If you think about now in video games, there are people called narratologists who thinks that the history aspect is more important, the other ludologists which thinks that the action aspect is more important. But think about the mixing of the two. How much now when you play a video game, let's think about the first video game, which was Space Wars or something like that, where you had to destroy some spaceship, or Pong, which are the two lines trying to, I mean, it's natural to imagine, or Space Invaders. The story is not there, but you imagine the story. You think, why the aliens are running? I'm the only one who can defend Earth. So you feel part of the story, and even on an unconscious level, you imagine the story. Why the aliens are here, or you have to think about the two contendants, the two adversaries in Pong. Probably they are fighting for something. One of them will be the winner, the other one will be the loser. So the history aspect is always present has always been present in video games, because actions, I mean, a story is made of events, and in video games you have events. And so the history aspects have been always increasingly been a part of video games. Think about Street Fighter, one of the most famous fighting games. There is the battle mode, the history mode. Well, you choose a character also because that character has a particular history, and you want to arrive at when you have finished the game with a character, you want to finish it with another character because you want to know what was the reason why the character is in part of the story. Or there is one video game called Valiant Hearts, which is settled in First World War. It's very like an interactive comic book. The game mechanics are very simple, but there is a great story and you want to go over because of the story. Or this video game is called Heavy Rain. Also, the mechanics are very simple, but there is, to compensate this aspect, there is a very strong narratives behind it. So, you know, the digital edition is a mixture of everything. And we have to talk also about enhanced publication, which is you know, now they're called enhanced ebooks, which is while on the digital humanities side, digital editions can always be tied to textual editing on one side, the Resetti Archive, the Blake Archive, the Canterbury Tales Project, and on the other side to electronic literature. There is also one side which is the side of criticism, of let's say essays or of criticism. And when we talk about in the early 2010, the term enhanced books came out because it was something aimed to the general public. Because think about electronic literature or critical digital edition. They are something for a very specialized public, for very specialized readers. Enhanced books is something for more a general audience. There is this software which is very nice. It's called Scholar, and it allows you. It gives you an environment. Sorry, but every time Internet Explorer tried to meddle in with. And Scholar is this software for Scholar is this software has been created by this Alliance for Networking Visual Culture to easily create enhanced publication, even if you don't have technical skill. You only need the actual contents. And there is a very interesting publication. This is about electronic literature. This is some kind of critical essay about electronic literature done using this software and exploiting the multimedia feature. So you have video, you can annotate it, you can put different, you can create paths between the, so you see you can read it in you have a normal table of contents, but you can have also very strong, it's very easily to embed video, and also you can visualize all the contents in new and novel way. So you can see how the table of contents organizes content in a three-way. You can see them in a radial format. You can see what paths are, transversal paths between all the different contents. What is how one page linked to the other. So you can see every kind of you can see, because basically what this software does is to model in an explicit way what are the contents. So you see what is a page, what is a path, what is a tag, what is an annotation, what is the media, and how they relate to each other. So you can create very complex publication using this tool. There is nothing new. These are things that the new media theorist has been talking about for many years. The fact is that we have a tool now that we can do it in an easy way. For instance, there is a book called Complex TV, Complex Storytelling, which has been published in print format, and there is, as a companion, there is a Scholar publication which, with all the multimedia is referring to, so you have a chapter on Lost, and you have the Lost video fragment is referring to. For instance, now I do teach at the master level. I have a teaching of electronic publishing and digital storytelling, and I ask to the students, instead of the final exam, to prepare something related to the dissertation they have to write. If they're doing an historical dissertation, create a digital archive of the contents you're talking with. One of them is doing a thesis on Black Mirror, and is creating a publication with Scholar, with all, is a student, so I can't ask for a very professional level, but so to do a part of his thesis using this tool, and see how this will change the way in which we'll work with the thesis. There are many of these. Well, this is the blog with all the everyday new digital publication came out using this tool, because it's not the perfect tool. We will never have the perfect tool for digital edition, but it offers a lot of functionalities. It's very easy to use. They also host the publication, so there are many of them. I wanted to see. There is a list of publication doing with it, but. Showcase, yeah, here it is. There was a previous version which was an interesting, 7 essay on interactive storytelling, with this one about, there was one about directing. A director made a directing manual in Scholar, so it was that how to move the camera, and so you had the example. So you have the textual description of what camera movements are, and then next you have the video explain what camera movements are. So you see that for some, it has really an added value creating books in this way. The issue is, and people who is dealing with digital textbooks is discovering now, digital textbooks, multimedia products are much more complex to create than traditional printed content. And I think that one of the, probably the jobs you are going to do once you have finished your MA is to work as a multimedia director, because you will, in this course you will, I think, and I'm sure that you will develop both the, some kind of sensibility about the when a multimedia product works and when it doesn't work, because you will understand at once, because we will have both some kind of sensitiveness from the humanistic side and also some kind of competencies from the technical side. Okay, we think we have a lot of things to. Okay, EPUB3 is a specialization used by the EPUB standard, which gave multimedia content to the. I think we have to jump some slide, because we have. How much time do we have left? Quarter. Okay. Okay. I want to show. First, I was talking about the importance of the preservation. There is this digital press, and they made the touch press, and they made a revolution in digital editions. They create interactive apps for. They have now they split. There's this the education. Okay. They create app only for iPad. You know that apps are programmed in a particular language. There are apps for Android, app for iPad. They create only apps for iPad, and they published an app about the solar, about the solar system, about the chemical elements. Then they create this app about the West, a digital edition of the Westland. Let's see.
It was called me. I had.
And in the human.
Some people.
Okay, yeah.
Myself.
It was about 3 years ago we decided to turn the Wasteland into an app, and I think it has brought.
So this is the main interface of the app.
To some people,
so you can see the original type of writing of
T.S. Eliot don't really remember, or people who loved it in the past, and some people who never. So above all, Eliot.
Let's see. Yeah, you have some interviews. You can read the text. You can have. There is a theoretical version of the Westland which is synchronized with the text, and they sold a lot of. It cost 10 euros or something like that, so it's not that much. Let's see if there is some. You have notes, you have different readings, you have Fiona show performance which is synchronized to the text. They also applied the same framework to the Shakespeare sonnets. See, we have Stephen Fry again.
My mistress' eyes are nothing like the sun. Coral, why then? That from my mistress reeks.
This is how the app looks like. So you have in the upper side the performance. In the lower side there is the text. You also have notes from the Harden, and they have. You have this interface where you can choose different actors, and everyone reads some of the Shakespeare sonnets. These digital editions, they had incredible success, and it's also, was kind of. I don't know how to explain. We're in the digital editing field. We were talking about 20 years about digital edition. We are creating digital editions for scholars, for educated reader, and so on. They had an incredible success. They came out from nothing, and they had an incredible success even between normal reader, because they thought about things like user experience, the user interface. Sometimes in digital edition, in scholarly digital editions, we think a lot about textual encoding, the data, the structure. We don't think about the interface, for instance. We think that, okay, but I will understand how to use it. They gave a lot of, they spend a lot of time about the kind of interface that is very nice and useful to use. And so they have some critics about the scholarly word, okay, but the text is not a really scholarly edition because the text could have been created in another way and so on. But anyway, these digital editions are largely used and are a success. So we have to remember that we have to create editions that people have to use, and not that we only scholars have to use. There is one problem. These are apps, so they are closed program. So what will happen in a few years when they will get old? And this is an aspect where, as digital humanists, we can give a hand. We help them. Okay, probably you can organize your structure in XML. You can separate all your content in this way, and they will be more easy to transfer it to another platform. Okay. I want to talk okay. This should be, we're going to close with this. What are the layers in a digital edition? What are the main ingredients? This is for electronic scholarly editions, but it's valid for every kind of digital edition. So we have operating logic, the algorithm, which is embodied in a programming language, what the edition does. Then there is the structured data. It could be an XML file, it could be a database, and so on. Then there is the raw data, which is the actual data contained by the structured data. And then there is the user interface, and everything that a digital edition, the behaviors of digital editions are all divided into these four aspects. Let's see, for instance, what is the easiest things you can do with a book in edition? Turning the page. Okay, turning the page is the easiest action you can do with a printed book. If you have to, in a digital edition, you have to program this, because you will need a program that will, first you need the text of the page, and this is the raw data. Then you will need the structured data, because or with an XML file or with the database, you will need to know what kind of page the text belongs to, the first page, the last page, and so on. Now you will need a user interface with the previous and next button. I want to go, the user interface is both for reading the text and both for navigating the text. Then you will need the operating logic to say when the user click up at the next button, if I'm on page N, I want to see the text which belongs to page N+1. okay, or n-1 if it's the previous page. And if on the first page, I can't have the n-1. And if I'm on the last page, I can't have the n+1 page. I can't go forward, I can only go back. So this is the operating logic belongs to the algorithmic side of the computer science, which is the stuff you will study in computational thinking. Structured data and raw data now belongs to what's called data science, which is very tied to statistics, but it's also tied to things like data creation. So how you model an XML, what kind of XML language are you using, how you structure a database, how you curate what kind of ontology are you using. User interface, also this is a very complex, now they're talking about traditional user interface, user experience, which is something which has its roots in things like the golden ratio, how pages were structured in print and color theory. Now there is also the interactive aspect, and something very, very now it's very user experience now is very valued now, because when you have a lot of information and you can't decide at once what is the most valuable information for you, you're going to choose on the visual of it. Sad but true. And also how easily you can access that information. So if you go back to the Google Arts and Culture project, you see that the user interface, the user experience has been curated a lot. There's been a lot of focus on this kind of experience that is given to the to people on this using these tools. I would like to show you. This is a very nice. This is the Mark Twain project is a digital scholarly edition of the works of Mark Twain, and they have a page on the technical sides, and there is this diagram showing the different levels. So we start from the actual object, from the physical artifacts, a relational database with all the metadata, and then there has been processed with the text that have been encoded in TI. There has been a scanning of the plates. They have extracted the metadata. They have encoded the TI encoded XML files they've been put in their own data store. Everything is preserved in their archive. All the text has been sent to XTF, which is a framework for publishing XML file. It was developed by the California Digital Library. You have a lot of other bunch of XML files, which is METS. They're all standard from the Library of Congress. METS is a metadata encoding and transmission standards, which is for creating packages of digital objects. You have the text, you have the digital images, you have the audio file, and you link them together. MADS and MODS. MADS is for the authority file, not the different version of a name. MODS is for descriptive bibliographic metadata, title, author, and so on. MIX, if I'm not wrong, is for technical details about images. And they're all served by this application called XTF, which stands for Extendable Text Framework. So if you go to, no, I don't want. If you go to the web, this is the website. This is what we see on the front end, on the final end. So if you're going to see Huckleberry Finn or so this is also an eclectic edition. So this is what we see in the end, but we have to remember that complex diagram and all the work that it was. There should be also some textual apparatus. Yeah, there are also all the variants I've recorded. Using a particular TI structure for the TI module for textual variants. But see, what looks very simple on the top is like an iceberg. What looks very simple off the top is very complex on what's under it, all the work that needed to be done. Okay, let's see if there is something. Okay, yes, then I want to close with this. this kind of what I call the semiotic digital stack. So the different level of, the difference between expression and content, and also these two levels can be separated in form and substance. So we can have a form of the expression, a substance of the expression, a form of the content, and substance of the content. Well, if you're going to hear some lectures by Dino Buzzetti, he's a master and he's be using this kind of, this was theorized for the first time by a Danish linguistic, Emslev. So, on the top level, on the form of expression, we have the digital image, because it represents the actual, what the page on the printed page looks like. On the substance of the expression, we have the encoded text, because it's always text in the same content, but on a different form. And this corresponds to what a Ferber manifestation. Then we have the audio file. We can have an audio file, an audio reading of the, which is on the level of the form of the content, because it's always text, but it's not anymore of the same expression of the printed printed page of the text, because now the voice is the voice that carries the words. And then in the content of the substance, we have adaptation, and this corresponds to the Ferber expression. Then at the bottom we have the Ferber work, the adaptation of the Canterbury Tales is the same story, but it's told using different words and different languages that they've written words. And so what kind of, we can have different relationship between all these levels, because on a paradigmatic level, we can have a mapping, a synchronization with this different level. On a syntagmatic level, we can have comparison. Think about collation, for instance. And on the same level, we can have annotation of all this digital object. So if you can see how complex relationships are in digital editions. Okay, I think this was the, yes. Well, there are many other things we could talk. Oh, let's close with this. There are two main things which are important, which are interoperability and preservation. Interoperability is about having different digital edition exchanging contents between them, which is synchronic and heterogeneous. Preservation, more or less, is the same thing, but preservation is on a diachronic level. Preservation is can read the same edition in 5, 10, 20 years. It's on a diachronic and homogeneous level, and is reflexive. But they are the two sides of the same coin. Okay, I think anyway, you will have the slide so you can have a look on what the other parts that we we left. Anyway, okay, thanks for listening. I hope that I gave you some, this was like kind of hints of what awaits you in this course. Okay, thanks for listening.